Welcome, friends of the Greasy Shop Rag. Today we're going to take a look at a Husqvarna T540iXP battery-powered chainsaw. The customer complaint is that it wasn't working. So I dug into this a little bit. You can see that I had opened it up and tried to find a problem, a reason why it wouldn't run. And came to the conclusion that it was going to need a new control board. There's certainly a lot of pieces here. It could be the power switch or the wiring harness or the brushless motor. And in this case, it was kind of an educated guess that it would need a control board. This is the board itself. There's the part number. And I want to show you something on this board. Now, this doesn't officially mean anything. This is just one of my observations from having replaced a couple of these over the years. So the board itself, well, let's get this thing unwrapped here. This is the control board. You see how I'm looking at the bottom of it, how smooth and flat it is? Okay, we're going to take a closer look at that a little later on. But it's nice and flat. So we got to get the old control board out.
What's this do? What's this do?
You know, it looks a little intimidating here, but, you know, so does the inside of an engine when you look at it for the first time, right? It's really not that big a deal. A key here would be, if it's your first time doing one, then take a bunch of pictures. So you can see the control board hiding there on the bottom underneath that cooling fan. I'm pulling a plug out of it right now, part of the wiring harness. We got to get that out of here. And it's tucked in there pretty good. What I'm going to remove now is the connector that the battery locks into. 2 screws hold that in place. And the reason we're removing it is because it's directly connected to that control board. The oil tank is in the way. So I'm going to drain the oil out. And then, yeah, there's a piece that fell off. We'll deal with that later. We got to get this tank out of the way, and there's a single screw on the other side here that is holding it in place. So there we go. Tank is loose. I'm not really going to remove it. I'm just going to kind of move it off to the side. And you'll notice that the oil tube pulled out of the tank. I could have just kept pulling the tank farther away and got it out of there, but it's not really bothering me. So here's another wire connector that's just got a tab that you release it. Comes right off. Note that white plastic piece that's kind of guiding those wires over the top of the cooling fins on the control board. So here's our 3 connections that go from the control board to the brushless motor. We'll remove these screws, and sure enough, all of them will drop down inside the saw, so we'll have to go searching for those. 1, 2, I don't know where the other one is. There it is, 3. All right. There's our old control board. And look at the bottom of it. It might be hard to tell in the video, but there's a definite bulge in the bottom of it compared to the new one. And I've seen this before. And this bulge is kind of subtle, but I've seen them much worse than this. There must be some heat expansion going on inside there when it fails. And looking at the surface of it, it almost appeared like there was a little micro crack in the bottom of it. You know, I'm not even 100% certain that this board is the reason it wouldn't run. There is a little bit of a guessing game going on here. And in fact, this is going to be a warranty claim. And I had to call Husqvarna Tech to ask for their guidance and approve the claim.
Grapes.
And pretty much the Husky Tech guy is the one that loaded the parts cannon on this one and fired away with the control board, which is logical based on the things that I checked and what I told him, and apparently from what he's seen himself. So we'll find out how good he was on his guess.
All right. What was I doing?
All right, I had a big interruption there. I don't know how long I was gone from the project, but long enough that I couldn't remember if I had tightened these screws down. It's kind of a... I mean, I get it. You know, when you're shorthanded in the shop, you got to wear a lot of hats. But it sure is annoying. So we're at the halfway point as far as this repair goes. The old board is out and the new board is going in. And in an earlier clip here, you saw me looking at this screw real close. And I was just looking at it to see if there's any thread locker on the screws. And there's not. So that's the way I'm going to put it back together. And I'll just make sure I put a good ugga-dugga on there and make sure that the screws are tight. Not ugga-dugga with the impact driver or bit driver. I just mean by hand. I'm going to tighten them up pretty good. I don't remember the cost of this board, but I wouldn't want to have to buy another one. Alright, so that other connector's got to be plugged in yet. This was the first one we took off. It's kind of hidden behind the fan a little bit. And another interruption, but we're back at it. Alright, we'll get that connector plugged in and then kind of tuck that whole control board down into place where it belongs. And now I'm routing that white plastic guide for those two little wires that was on top of the cooling fins. And right away we can screw down the battery receptacle, we're going to call it. These things have been pretty popular lately. The guys up in the buckets, they love them because you pull the trigger and it goes. Lightweight, decent power. Apparently the runtime must be pretty good too, otherwise they wouldn't be coming back. I mean, the customers won't be coming back for more. Alright, I'm tucking that oil hose back into the tank. It went in there kind of easy, and in fact that made me nervous that it was going to leak, but I let the sauce sit on the shelf for a day before I called the customer and told him it was ready, and it didn't leak. Alright, we kind of got the oil tank in place. We'll put that one single screw in there. Hold it down. You know, the tank gets sandwiched in there between the two halves, and this kind of holds it as well. We'll put this little runway for the wiring harness back in place. And it snaps down there on a pin on both sides. There's our switch for our chain brake. Looks good. So we got this piece. Yeah, where does it go? It's not obvious, I'll tell you that. And I'm dropping it into place right now. But I'm going to be honest with you. There is 5 minutes of footage I cut out of here. I was being stubborn and I wanted to try and figure it out without looking at the schematic. And I couldn't. I had to go back and open up the schematic and take a look at where that piece was. It gave me a general location. Then I had to figure out the orientation. It's kind of a weird little piece. Must direct some air across the battery. All right. Speaking of weird little pieces, this whole trigger mechanism it's pretty simple, but there's a lot of things that got to be lined up. So there was a switch on the bottom of the control switch. And there's a pin that the trigger rests in. And you have the spring that works on the operator presence lever. And then a tab on the back of the trigger that's got to be up in the housing. It's not in there right now. There, I got it in there right there. And that other tab is up against the bottom of the switch, and the trigger is on the pin. So that part is all correct. But the spring isn't right now. The spring is on the wrong side of that screw boss right there on the handle. So this operator presence picks up the spring, but then you can see it's not going to go past that boss. So we tried to move the spring on the other side, and then the whole thing came apart. Put it back together one more time. Trigger goes down on the pin underneath the switch. End of the trigger gets tucked up into the housing. There we go. Spring is on the bottom of the screw boss. Now we can put the operator presence lever in place. We slide it into the center, slide the spring into the center of it, drop it over the stud, and there we go. That's the way it should look. This is the hand grip on the other side here. And it doesn't have to go on right now. Putting this on here right now and trying to hold it in place is not the right way to do it. So this gray piece is dropping into a slot.
Right.
And it knocked my trigger loose again. So for a third time, I'll show you how that trigger goes in there. Stay. Alright, operator presence lever is down where it should be without that tab hanging out. Kinda there. Putting that lever, that cover in there again for I don't know what reason there. I finally decided I didn't want to do that. And now one last sanity check before I put the cover on. Make sure there's no extra parts down in the bin or on the bench. And what you got to do here is you got to line up the pin that holds the support for the brake lever. So there's the pin and there's the hole in the brake lever. Pin's got to go in there when you put this together. The on-off switch on top has got to kind of line up in the grooves on the half here, and that other gray insert with the logo on it's got to be lined up. Everything on the bottom pretty much automatically drops into place. See, I laid it on there crooked. There we go. That looks pretty good. And I'm putting the screws in, but if you look at the operator presence lever, you can see that that's not where it's supposed to be. And I just don't see that right now for whatever reason. Probably because I'm looking at so many other things. One other thing I learned here with these is that a couple of screws and then a test run. And then after everything works, the rest of the screws can go in. Unless you really like turning screws in and out, you know what I mean? So even here, I put this screw in and then I'm going to try it. Nope, the operator presence lever won't move because I got it hung up there. So the screw's got to come back out. And we just open it up enough to drop that lever into place. Just like that. Like that. There we go. Now I'll run that screw back down. And those 3 screws I have in there, or 4, whatever I put in, that's enough for me to move forward. So you would think that, hey, he did it. He put a control board in there. Thinks the saw is ready to go. Well, I'm going to show you that that's not the case. I'll put the battery in here. And the battery's got a full charge. We're going to power it up. And you're going to see that we just get flashing green lights. And it won't run like that. If I were to pull the trigger, it wouldn't do anything. That's because the control board doesn't come with any firmware on it. This is a job that anybody can do, but only dealer access can allow you to update the firmware or install firmware onto the board. So this box I have here is Husqvarna Service Hub, and it's what I use to connect the computer to the chainsaw. I had that jumper cable between the battery and the saw because the saw's got to have power for this. And right now I'm plugging in the connector. If I plugged in the connector by the battery, I could look at that as well and see what the voltage is or how many charge cycles are on it. But we're plugging into the connector by the saw because we want to update the firmware in the saw. This is, we're not going to get in depth on this program. In fact, I'm going to take a closer look at this little sign on my toolbox. And don't tell me, yeah, there's the scrunch right there on the bench, because I already know the scrunch has been found. So there's a green light on that box, and it's on the cable side of the computer, and that's telling me that the computer sees the box. But the other light was still white, and that's on the side of the saw, and it wasn't green until now because I powered on the saw and then it saw it. So now that I got 2 green lights, I should be connected. The computer doesn't recognize what model saw this is because there's no firmware on it. So we select it from a list. This can be done with product numbers, serial numbers. It asks me what version I want to put in there, and then it's updating the firmware. And we're not going to go through this whole thing. I just left a couple seconds around here so you could kind of see the pace that it takes to upload it. So once that firmware was all put on there, I'm going to put the bar and chain on, and then I'll test run this thing. And if it runs like it's supposed to, then that's all I'm going to have for you on the Husqvarna T540iXP chainsaw that needed a new control board. Thanks for watching. Later.